Hidden deep within Roman history lies a name often overshadowed by his great rival, Licinius. He was the last man to stand against Constantine the Great. From a simple soldier to the second highest throne in the empire, his journey was nothing short of extraordinary. But his story is not just about war. It's about faith, betrayal, and the painful birth of a new world order. Today, we uncover the forgotten emperor whose downfall changed Christianity and Rome forever. Licinius' story begins in the shadow of Emperor Galerius. They were childhood friends, growing up together in the rough military camps of the Danube frontier. Galerius saw something special in this young soldier: unwavering loyalty, sharp tactical mind, and a hunger for glory. Their bond would shape Licinius' entire destiny. But in the brutal world of Roman politics, even childhood friendships could become weapons of destruction. The year 308 AD changed everything. Emperor Galerius elevated Licinius to the rank of Augustus, giving him control over the western provinces. Overnight, a simple soldier became one of the 4 rulers of the Roman world. But this sudden rise came with a heavy price. To the east, Maximinus Daia watched with jealousy. To the west, a rising star named Constantine plotted his own path. Licinius knew the throne was not a gift. It was a battlefield. 313 AD, the city of Milan witnessed one of history's most significant meetings. Licinius and Constantine, 2 rival emperors, came together to sign a document that would change the world. The Edict of Milan granted legal status to Christianity, ending centuries of persecution. But this alliance was built on fragile ground. Both emperors knew this peace was temporary. They were not friends. They were competitors, waiting for the right moment to strike. To seal their fragile alliance, Constantine offered his half-sister, Constantia, as a bride to Licinius. This was no love match. It was pure politics. Constantia became a bridge between 2 ambitious emperors. But living between her husband and her brother was a nightmare. She witnessed their growing hatred firsthand. Every dinner, every council meeting carried the tension of a coming storm. And poor Constantia was trapped in the middle. Within months, the cracks began to show. Licinius grew suspicious of Constantine's growing power in the West. Constantine, in turn, accused Licinius of undermining his authority. Letters were exchanged, filled with false praise and hidden threats. The Edict of Milan became a distant memory. Rome was heading toward another civil war, and this time there would be no reconciliation. Only one emperor could survive. 316 AD, the first thunder of war. At Cibalae in Pannonia, the 2 armies clashed for the first time. Constantine's 20,000 veterans crushed Licinius's larger force through superior tactics. The battlefield ran red with blood. Licinius barely escaped with his life, retreating under the cover of darkness. But this defeat only fueled his rage. He would have his revenge. Just not today. Today, he would live to fight another day. Defeated, but not destroyed, Licinius was forced to accept a humiliating peace. He surrendered most of his European territories and retreated to the east. But his pride was wounded more than his army. He began to change, becoming more suspicious, more paranoid, more hostile. The man who once co-signed the Edict of Milan now viewed Christianity as a threat, and his hatred for Constantine consumed him day and night. In the years following his defeat, Licinius began a systematic persecution of Christians in the East. Bishops were dismissed, churches were closed, and Christian officials were expelled from his court. He forced his soldiers to make pagan sacrifices. But this wasn't just religious zeal, it was calculated rebellion. By attacking Christians, Licinius was attacking Constantine's most loyal supporters. He was preparing for the final war. By 324 AD, both emperors knew the time had come. There could be no peace between them. Constantine gathered his forces in the west, proclaiming God's favor. Licinius assembled his mighty eastern army, placing his faith in the old gods. Two empires, two visions, two destinies. Only one would survive. The Roman world held its breath as the two giants marched toward their final confrontation. The Battle of Adrianople, one of history's most decisive clashes. Constantine's 130,000 soldiers faced Licinius's 165,000 warriors. The odds were against Constantine, but his faith was unshakable. He rode into battle carrying the sacred standard of Christ. Licinius, on the other hand, placed his trust in pagan sacrifices. The heavens themselves seemed to choose sides. What followed was a massacre, and the beginning of Licinius's end.
While the land battle raged, another war was fought at sea. Constantine's son, Crispus, led a daring naval assault at the Hellespont. With only 80 ships, he destroyed Licinius's massive fleet of 200 vessels. Using clever tactics and favorable winds, Crispus outmaneuvered the Eastern Navy. Licinius's last escape route was cut off. He was now trapped, surrounded by enemies on all sides. The noose was tightening.
The final battle was fought at Chrysopolis, near modern-day Istanbul. Licinius's last 30,000 soldiers faced Constantine's veteran legions. But after Adrianople and Hellespont, Licinius's army had lost all hope. They broke and surrendered within hours. Licinius himself fled to Nicomedia, desperately seeking a way out. But there was no escape. The empire now belonged to Constantine alone. Licinius's dream was shattered forever. Licinius was captured in Nicomedia and brought before Constantine in chains. The man who once ruled half the Roman world now kneeled as a prisoner. But surprisingly, Constantine showed mercy. Licinius was spared, at least for now. He was exiled to Thessalonica, living under house arrest. Constantia pleaded with her brother to spare her husband's life. But Constantine's mercy was a dangerous game. Licinius's days were already numbered. Thessalonica became Licinius's prison. Once an emperor, now a forgotten man in a quiet villa. He spent his days in isolation, watching the waves of the Aegean Sea. He had time to reflect on his rise, his rivalry, his choices. Did he regret fighting Constantine? Did he regret his persecution of Christians? Perhaps, but it was too late. His fate was already sealed. Constantine was building a new empire, and Licinius had no place in it. While Licinius wasted away in exile, Constantine was making history. The Council of Nicaea convened in 325 AD, the first ecumenical council of the Christian Church. Bishops from across the empire gathered to define Orthodox faith. Ironically, at the very moment when Christian unity was being declared, Licinius's fate was being decided. Some legends claim he was executed while the council was in session. Whether true or not, the symbolism is powerful. A new world was being born as the old one died. While Licinius wasted away in exile, Constantine was making history. The Council of Nicaea convened in 325 AD, the first ecumenical council of the Christian Church. Bishops from across the empire gathered to define Orthodox faith. Ironically, at the very moment when Christian unity was being declared, Licinius's fate was being decided. Some legends claim he was executed while the council was in session. Whether true or not, the symbolism is powerful. A new world was being born as the old one died.
Despite his mercy, Constantine could not trust Licinius. Reports reached the emperor of possible plots and conspiracies among Licinius's old supporters. Whether true or fabricated, it was enough. Constantine ordered Licinius's arrest for the second time. On a quiet morning, Roman soldiers arrived at his villa. Licinius knew. This time, there would be no mercy. He had outlived his usefulness. His execution was now inevitable.
In the spring of 325 AD, Licinius was executed. The order came directly from Constantine. Historical accounts differ. Some say he was beheaded. Others say he was hanged. The exact date remains debated. What we know for sure, the last rival of Constantine was gone. His body was thrown into a river, perhaps to erase him from memory. The Roman Empire now had one master. The age of the Tetrarchy was finally over.
Licinius died, but his legacy lived on. He was the last obstacle between Constantine and absolute power. His persecution of Christians ironically made them more united. His defeat solidified Christianity as the empire's favored religion. But history has not been kind to Licinius. Constantine's writers painted him as a tyrant, a traitor, a persecutor. But was he truly evil? Or was he simply a man who lost a war and paid the ultimate price? Licinius's fall marked the end of an era. The Tetrarchy, Diocletian's system of 4 co-emperors, was dead. Constantine now ruled alone, from Britain to Egypt. A new era had begun, an era of Christian emperors, of a single powerful throne. But that throne was built on the blood of men like Licinius. Men who once shared power, laughed together, and fought together. Now, they were just footnotes in Constantine's glorious story. Licinius's death was not the end of his family's suffering. His young son, also named Licinius, was executed months later. Constantine could not allow any potential rival to survive. The boy was still a child, but in Roman politics, even children could become threats. Constantia, now widowed and childless, lived the rest of her life in the shadows. The Licinian dynasty was completely wiped out. No heir, no legacy, no future. Constantia, the sister of Constantine and widow of Licinius, lived in grief for years. She never remarried. She never recovered. She witnessed her brother kill her husband, then her son. Her life was a tragedy wrapped in imperial purple. Some stories say she died shortly after her son's execution. Others say she vanished from history, forgotten by both her brother's court and her husband's supporters. A queen without a kingdom, a mother without a child. After Licinius's death,
Constantine and his historians systematically erased his legacy. Licinius's coins were melted down, his statues toppled, his name removed from official records. He was portrayed as a tyrant, a persecutor of Christians, and an enemy of Rome. But the truth is far more complex. Licinius co-created the Edict of Milan, a document that legalized Christianity. He had Christian supporters, Christian officials, and Christian friends. But history is written by the victors, and Licinius lost. One of Licinius's greatest crimes, according to Constantine, was his persecution of Christians. But historians debate this heavily. Licinius did remove Christian officials from his court. He did force soldiers to make pagan sacrifices. But was this a systematic persecution or political retaliation? Some believe Licinius was simply trying to secure the loyalty of his pagan army. Others believe Constantine exaggerated the persecution to justify his war. In the fog of history, the truth is hard to find. Despite his defeats, Licinius was no military fool. He had won many battles before facing Constantine. His campaigns against the Persians and Germanic tribes were highly successful. His soldiers adored him. His tactics were sound. But Constantine was simply better, more innovative, more adaptive, and more fortunate. Licinius fought hard, but he was fighting against destiny. The rising tide of Christianity was impossible to resist, and Licinius found himself on the wrong side of history. The Licinius-Constantine conflict was not just political, it was spiritual. Licinius represented the old Roman gods, Jupiter, Mars, Apollo. Constantine represented the new Christian god. When Licinius consulted pagan oracles before battle, Constantine prayed to the Christian cross. When Licinius sacrificed bulls for victory, Constantine saw visions of heavenly light. Their war was the clash of two religions, and Christianity won. This was the moment the ancient world gave birth to the medieval one. Constant defeats, political isolation, and constant betrayal. It took a massive toll on Licinius's psyche. Friends became enemies. Allies became traitors. Even his wife, Constantia, was caught between him and her brother. Paranoia consumed him. Every shadow was a threat. Every letter was a conspiracy. By the end, Licinius was no longer the confident soldier Galerius had once known. He was a broken man, haunted by fear and failure. His mind crumbled before his empire did. Licinius failed as a diplomat. He could not win allies, he could not negotiate effectively, and he could not manage his generals. His paranoia drove away potential supporters. Even his own eastern provinces grew weary of his rule. Constantine, in contrast, was a master diplomat. He offered mercy, forged alliances, and united his people under a common faith. Licinius built his empire through fear. Constantine built his through love and vision. In the end, vision always wins over fear. History is full of what-ifs. What if Licinius had defeated Constantine at Adrianople? Would Christianity have remained a minority religion? Would the Roman Empire have remained pagan? Would the Tetrarchy have survived? Perhaps, but history took a different path. Licinius lost, and the world changed forever. His defeat ensured that Christianity would become the dominant faith of Europe. Without Licinius's fall, there would be no Byzantine Empire, no Holy Roman Empire, no Christian Europe. We live in the world Constantine built, but we must never forget the man who failed to stop him. Today, Licinius survives mostly through coins. Roman coins bearing his face, side profile, laurel crown, strong jaw. These coins tell a story his enemies tried to erase. They show him as a legitimate emperor, ruling by the will of the Senate and people. Archaeologists find these coins across Europe, in Britain, France, Italy, Greece, Turkey. Each coin is a tiny witness to a forgotten empire. Each coin whispers, "I was here. I ruled. I mattered." Licinius's face lives on through silver and bronze. Licinius appears rarely in medieval art and literature. When he does appear, he is usually depicted as a villain, a cruel tyrant who fell to God's chosen emperor. In Byzantine art, he stands defeated before Constantine, often shown with demonic features. In Western histories, he is a footnote, a minor obstacle in the triumphant march of Christianity. But modern scholarship has begun to reevaluate him. Was he truly a monster? Or was he just a man caught on the losing side? The art of history is slowly changing. Constantine became the sole emperor, but his victory came with a heavy price. He had killed his co-emperor, his former ally, his brother-in-law. He had executed his own nephew. He lived the rest of his life surrounded by guilt and suspicion. He spent his final years trying to atone, building churches, calling councils, and seeking spiritual peace. But the ghost of Licinius haunted him. In his final days, Constantine reportedly said, "I have shed too much blood." Perhaps that blood included Licinius. Today, historians are rethinking Licinius. They see him not as a villain, but as a complex man shaped by his circumstances. He was a loyal friend to Galerius, a competent general, and a reluctant persecutor. His Christianity was complex. He may have genuinely believed in the Edict of Milan at first. His later persecution may have been political rather than religious. He was not evil. He was just on the wrong side of history. A man who lost. And losing in history is the greatest crime of all. What can we learn from Licinius? That power is fleeting, that alliances are fragile, that history is written by winners, but also that even the losers have a story worth telling. Licinius reminds us that every era has its dark corners, people forgotten, voices silenced, truths buried. His life is a warning. Do not trust power. Do not trust politics, and never assume you are on the right side. The wheel of fortune turns, and today's emperor may be tomorrow's prisoner. So who was Licinius? A soldier? An emperor? A persecutor? A victim? He was all of these and none of these. He was a man who rose from nothing, ruled half the world, fought the greatest emperor in history, and lost everything. His name is barely remembered today, just a line in Roman history textbooks. But his story is important, because every hero needs a villain, every victory needs a defeat, and every empire needs a forgotten emperor to remind us that power, no matter how great, will always